Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time I'm going to look at the Linux Mint 19 operating system. Codenamed Tara, this was released at the end of June 2018 and is a Linux distro to which many Windows users may end up migrating. In this video, I'm therefore going to look at Linux Mint 19 from the perspective of a Windows user who's considering transitioning to Linux. So, here we are on the linuxmint.com website where we can get Linux Mint 19, and it's worth pointing out that Linux Mint 19 is a long-term support release, an LTS release, which means it has support for 5 years, which takes its support to 2023. So to get it, we will go to a download, and on the download page you will see there are 3 different versions of Linux Mint 19 available with different desktop environments: Cinnamon, Mate or XFCE. The most common is Cinnamon, that's the one I like to use, so we'll go for that. And most people should use the 64-bit version if you're running a modern computer. It's worth pointing out that the system requirements here are at least 1 GB of RAM, although 2 GB are recommended, and at least 15 GB of space to install it, although ideally 20 GB. And I will install from one of the many mirrors we have down here. Best to pick one close to you in the world. I'm in the UK. I will click the University of Kent mirror service to download it, and I'll click save here to save that image, to download it, and it'll take a little bit of time because it's a 1.8 GB file, but when it's finished you'll end up with a file on your machine, as I've got here, our Linux Mint 19 ISO file. And this now needs to be written to either a DVD or to a USB drive to install on a computer, and I'm here going to write it to a USB drive, and you need a USB drive of at least 4 GB capacity, and I'm going to write the image to the drive using this software here, which is called Etcher. And if you haven't got Etcher, just go to the web, go to etcher.io, and you can download a version of Etcher here for your machine. It'll default to the one you want, but you can pick lots of other versions as well. So anyway, I've got Etcher here on the machine, so I can just select the image. There it is, our Linux Mint 19 image. We'll select that. It's already picked up the USB drive I've got inserted. This happens to be a 16 GB drive, but as I say, anything 4 GB plus will do. And I can now just click on Flash. And Windows will check if we really want to do this. Yes, we do. I'll click on yes, and Etcher will now get on writing Linux Mint 19 to the Flash drive. And there we are, it's finished. So we now have a bootable USB drive with Linux Mint 19 on it. So we now just need to take that drive and to insert it into the PC on which we want to install Linux Mint 19 and boot that machine up. And by the magic of filmmaking, here we are booting up from that USB drive. And it's worth pointing out, on your own PC you may have to go into the BIOS by pressing a key at startup, probably a function key or a delete key. You might have to set in the BIOS for your machine to boot from USB. And it's also worth pointing out you might see a slightly different sequence of events as the machine will boot up, but if you just let things run through, you'll end up on the Linux Mint desktop as I am here. Now, at this stage we haven't installed Linux Mint, we've just booted from what's called Live Media, the bootable USB drive we've created. And you could at this point try out Linux Mint 19 just by using the Live Media drive. But we actually want to install it, so I'll go over to Install Linux Mint and click on that. We need to set language and keyboard layout, and then it'll say install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, flash, etc. Make sure you tick that and continue. Next, we'll come to the screen here, and this will pick up any existing operating systems on your computer. So here, for example, it's picked up the fact there's already Linux Mint 18 on this machine, or it could, for example, on many machines pick up you've got Windows there already. So you could choose to install the new operating system alongside the old one. Here I'm going to, though, go for the second option, erase disk and install Linux Mint. This, to be absolutely clear, will take everything off your current computer, get rid of your operating system, and put the new operating system onto it. That gives you a clean install, but don't do this on a computer with, say, Windows on it if you don't want to get rid of Windows. And of course it checks that I'm really sure I want to delete what's on my machine. I do. I'll continue. It'll check things like time zones, all this sort of stuff. We now have to pick a username and a computer's name. I'm going to give it my name. It's picked up a computer name. I need to pick a username. I'm going to pick, say, that, and a fairly straightforward password here, which it thinks is fair. I'm going to set it to log in automatically, which I'm going to find a bit easier. And I do want to point out here, we're setting up a local account on this machine. We are not here creating an account with Linux Mint online. Linux Mint is very different to, for example, if you install Windows. If you've gone to a Windows install recently, it asks you lots of questions about all the data it wants to share with the world. None of that happens with Linux Mint. This is simply a local account to log on to this particular machine. So we'll click on continue. And there we are, it's finished. So all we've got to do now is to press restart now, and the machine will tell us to remove our USB drive, press enter, and we can boot properly into Linux Mint 19. So here we are booting into Linux Mint 19 on the machine with the operating system fully installed. And I should say this is my second boot because I have gone in and made a few changes to things like font sizes so you can see everything a bit better on the screen. And that in fact has messed up their lovely welcome screen now, but there we are. If you want, you can see this on boot. I don't think I'll show that on boot after now, so I'll just close that down. Now, just to give you a basic idea of what's going on, if you are a Windows user, this should be fairly familiar to you, because we've got down here what they call a panel, what would be a taskbar in Windows, and we've got a menu up here, which is a very nice menu. I like the look of the menu in Linux Mint. Everything is grouped into sensible categories: accessories, graphics, internet, office, etc. It's not like in, say, Windows 10 where everything is just alphabetical. It's a much more sensible install. I should also say, as I've inferred already, you can